So today's gospel has two parables about the kingdom of God. The first one talks about how the sower scatters the seed and then just watches it grow without doing anything, just watches it grow on its own. And then when it's ripe for the harvest, he's harvested. I think this parable addresses what I've always been intrigued by, and that is the mysterious interplay between God's part and our part in the growth of God's kingdom. As the parable clearly shows, the growth of God's kingdom is ultimately God's work, not ours. God is the one who makes these crops grow, not us. However, we have an essential role in their growth as well. He had to plant it, we have to cultivate it, we have to water it, etc. I'll come back to that. Second parable of the mustard seed shows how the kingdom starts small and grows into this biggest of plants with large branches to protect others. Personally, my favorite parable of the kingdom is that of the yeast, that the kingdom is like yeast that leavens the dough. We are meant, to me what that brings out is that we are meant to be a leaven in society, to make our society more Christ-like and more loving, with acts of kindness and working for justice, caring for creation, caring for those on the margins, with our Holy Family apartment, with our free store, with our food pantry, with our anti-racism work, with our Corpus Christi Mass last week, which I was really sorry to miss. You know, I hated when Father RJ upstages me. He made the front page of the Catholic Spirit, and that really bothered me, Father RJ. That should have been the pastor, not the associate pastor. But so anyway. But it was great the way that it was. If you haven't seen it, take a look at that article. It was wonderful, but really showed how this was a work of racial reconciliation. You might know that the freeway was built through a thriving black community, the Rondo community, however many years ago. And it was deliberately done that way. And that was an attack on that thriving black community, from which it's never really come back totally. And so the procession, I'm told, stopped over the freeway and stopped for some minutes or some moments just to recollect that damage that had been done. One of the graces of my retreat, which I just talked about, was I was reading, Pope Francis has a new little book. It's not an encyclical or even an exhortation. It's just a little book that he wrote in collaboration with Austin Ivory, who was a speaker here. And it's entitled, Let's Dream, A Path to a Better Future. And I would recommend it. It's about 140 pages and very readable. And in there, he encourages us to reflect on our COVID experience. And I know, most of us, we don't want to reflect on it. We just want to forget about it, right? But I think it is something, this communal trauma, this worldwide trauma that we've experienced. It is good for us to reflect on it and what we've learned. And one of I think the biggest burdens of the COVID crisis was the isolation it created for so many of us, really for all of us. Whether it be distance learning for students, whether it be working from home and not being with colleagues, whether it be social distancing. At the retreat house, there was these please social distance 6 feet. It had these signs all over. I just had this impulse to rip the sign down. I'm sick of that, sick of social distancing. And masks. I mean, even this morning, or not this morning, this afternoon, some people asked about masks and when are we going to get rid of masks? And we have that survey. Please respond to the survey. We just want everybody to feel safe and be safe. The endless Zoom calls, the not being able to hug people and shake hands and socialize and be here in church, and on and on and on, all the ways in which we were isolated. And as we come out of COVID, at least here in Minnesota and the United States, we are called, Pope Francis says we're called out of our isolation and also called out of our individualism, which Pope Francis sees as a deeper pandemic in our society than COVID, that the pandemic of individualism. to realize that no one is saved alone. I think of India, I'm particularly conscious of India because of our sister parish there, but you look at just how COVID is spreading in India. 2 members of our sister parish died of COVID. But if we might feel safe here in the United States, but if the virus is allowed to spread in other parts of the world, it'll incubate, it'll mutate, and it could really come back to us. So no one is saved alone. We have to really do this together. And I think that the rich nations of the world are starting to realize that and trying to address that at the G7 meeting in England. Pope Francis reminds us that we're called to be a people. And I know this might seem a little abstract, but the more I prayed about it, the more I thought, this is really important. We are called to be a people, the people of God. I think as Americans, we can very easily slip into thinking of ourselves as isolated, autonomous individuals. That's sort of, I think it was Robert Bellow wrote this book about America, and he said kind of the symbol of America is to see all these people in their cars alone on their freeways in these little bubbles, in these little cars, just, going down by ourselves, isolated from other people. I think that can be our default thinking, to think of ourselves as isolated, autonomous individuals. But that is really not true. We're not isolated individuals. We are part of the human family. We depend on each other in so many ways. If we think about it, and I won't, get into all of it, but I think we're all, smart people. We know that we depend on each other in so many ways. So we're not autonomous. We do need each other. We do depend on each other. So I think that Pope Francis is calling us that this could be one of the great graces of our long COVID experience, to realize that we're not alone, that we are not alone. We maybe felt alone, lonely, isolated, but that we're not alone. We are a part of a people. We're part of God's people. We're part of the human family. We're part of God's family. We are all brothers and sisters with each other around the world. And we're called to care for each other with compassion, especially people on the margins. So it's kind of really, Pope Francis is calling us Americans to a different way of thinking about ourselves. And I know I need that. I need to say, we realize I'm not just this autonomous individual. I'm part of the church. I'm part of the human family. I'm part of God's family. We are all brothers and sisters. And as I've mentioned before, our experience with our sister parish in Northeast India really brought that home to me when we were halfway around the world. And it just struck me, my goodness, these are our brothers and sisters. And this Thursday night, we will have a conference call with them, a Zoom call with them. Yes, a Zoom call. But that's okay, because we're not going to be able to go visit them. So I think that our temptation to think of ourselves as independent, as isolated, as autonomous can be really destructive for us and for our world. As 12-steppers call it, it's really stinking thinking. And I'm asking you to reflect on that. Again, this might seem a little abstract, but I don't think it is abstract. I think it's really, really important. So let's learn, my friends, let's learn, my sisters and brothers, to think of ourselves as members of God's family, the human family, God's holy people. And then let's act that way. It's not just a concept, but it's a concept we need to act on. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.